which we are creating. And as you see, can you see on your screen, you are watched. Sorry, but it's not that we are watching, but everybody is watched, everybody is tracked every time we are on the internet. So we will move. The lecture would be divided as what are the basis of various legal, or you can say the behavioral aspects of the law we will be discussing, and especially in context with the data protection and the data protection laws that are prevailing across the world. So few of the data protection laws that are prevailing in the world, how we reach the data protection law, and what are the requirements, and why we need to discuss, especially in a summer school, when we are dealing with the behavioral finance nudge theory, and the how we interpret the behavior of the individual. So the data comes because without data we cannot interpret or we cannot predict any model. So data is one of the important aspects. And in today's world, when we talk about in today's world, in the connected world, how we are providing our data by our explicit consent or implicit consent or without our consent. So we will be discussing, prior moving to that, we will be discussing what is law and behavior. So law and behavior, as how they are correlated with each other, because as we will you will understand that law is nothing but it is the manifestation of a social norm of the society or a particular behavior of a society required, on the law of a land uh, is formed in such a that that is based on the basic human principles as well as the cultural context in which the law is prevailing. So societies to survive or even exist, it must inescapably anchor itself on law, which in turn governs the behavior of the member of the society in question, as well as their relation to the right and obligation. So, we have two schools of thought, or the different school of thought, and as we have in different, you can say, disciplines. So, in law, we have school of thoughts which argue that how laws are framed. So, Hans Kelsen was one of the pioneer in, you can say, in in defining how why laws are framed and how laws are framed. He said that, as observed, that function of every social order is to bring about a certain mutual behavior of individuals, to induce them to certain positive or negative behavior, to certain action or absenteeism from action. For example, if we are living in our country, we have certain laws. We have the Constitution of India. We have various laws defined. Whether we have state laws, we have land laws, we have different domestic laws, we have various religious laws. So these all laws uh, try to influence an individual behavior, or try to influence, they obviously influence an individual behavior in a set of pattern, that in a set of pattern or in a set of norms that you should start behaving. So he said that it is, according to Hen Kelsen, the law is, it is a mutual consent. Uh, it is the mutual behavior of individuals to induce a certain positive or negative behavior depending on this certain cultural norms. So it is the legal norms that guide the or delimit or determine pattern of behavior in any society. So for example, we will take an example of, we have our Indian Constitution, we have various laws, we have the fundamental right, the directive principles of the state policies, the various laws. They provide, for example, the directive principles of the state policies provide the humanitarian values that a citizen of a country needs to follow by upkeeping the safeguarding of the nature, or various laws that helps to preserve or to provide a society a better cohesive unit. So Robert S. Summers also has, he defined the laws in a better, or he has taken a step further from health, and he says that a law consists of legal authorities and legal rules. As we know, legal authorities and legal rules, we have legal authority based on the rules and the constitution that we have in India. Moral aspects of law, every society has a certain morals, that the law is based on certain moral aspects. And law of coercive features. Law of coercive feature, that is a particular, you can say, for example, a particular action is intended by a subject or an individual. If he or she deviates from that particular or the said norms, the law and the person or the subject is dealt according to the law. So moving further, Bentham was one of the pioneers in law. He devised the utilitarian theory as in economics. That is the state utilitarian states that aim of the individual and the legislator in the conduct of the society should be achieve the greatest happiness for the masses. That is, the law should be such that it should benefit the greater masses, it should benefit the greater number of people, such as if we have various, for example, in our constitution or in our, you can say, especially I will take the example of the constitution because everybody would be aware of the constitution. In our constitution, we have certain, you can say, arrangements for various sections of the society, how to uplift those sections of the society, how to provide the various, you can say, benefits to the society of the society. So sir, there is some disturbance. Dr. Vikas, I think your mic is on, Dr. Vikas. So, moving on to the classical doctrine, the history of the world from the perspective of the history of the world, from the perspective of the social contract theory can be divided into two periods to it. The period before and the period after the state. The classical school upheld this view that there was an unwritten social contract between every people and its rules. The classical school started that there is an unwritten contract between the people, that these are the set of norms that need to be followed by the society for better management of the resource of the society and better management of the society, and for the greater good of the society. Moving further, Thomas Hobbes contended that sovereign were the beneficiary of the contractual authorization, while John Locke added that nature of the relation between sovereign and people was one of trust. So the classical school of held that there is this unwritten contract, but Thomas Hobbes and the John Locke proposed that it is a contractual authorization by between the state and the individuals. So a minimum level of, you can say, the minimum level of the certainty in the society has been created by adopting certain laws based on the prior discussion of, you can say, the legal authority, the moral code of conduct, and the various practices followed by the society. So the premise of the classical school was to the effect that humans were essentially rational creatures whose reasoning quality placed them for above all other animals. Bentham labored on devising a universal concept of just law called the utilitarian, the greatest happiness for the greatest number of the people. So the classical school was to the effect were essentially rational. It believed that people are rational, and the individual will behave rationally. They knew the norms of the society, they knew everything about the society, and they will behave in a rational way. That is you can say, the assumption of the classical school. And whereas the Bentham proposed that the utilitarian concepts will serve the greatest happiness to the society. So, we will move further to the positive. You can say the positive doctrine of the law. The positivist doctrine says that the criminal behavior could only be properly dealt with it when it is well understood. So when the classical school was in the concept that it is a contract between the individuals to maintain you can say a harmony in the society, whereas the positive doctrine says that criminal behavior can only be dealt. They were the first to start the study of the individual behavior regarding the various deviation in the society with is specific to us to the law. So behavior of humans could be explained through biological and cultural evolutions rather than as self-determining being who were free to do what they want, as suggested by the classical school. The behavior of humans could be explained through biological and cultural evolution rather than self-determining beings who were free to do what they wanted. So the positives say that it is we can study the individual, we can define why a certain individual is deviating from a particular behavior, why a particular individual is not following a certain norms in the society. So moving further to the positivist doctrine, there was one you can say these scientist who practiced it. He was the first among the first to analyze the individual behavior, how individuals behave in a society, and how the crime is being conducted by the individuals in the society. For his, he has written one of his famous book, that is The Criminal Man. So he identified various biological traits of the individual which will lead to a person doing a crime. So he identified the biological traits by he conducted his study in a prison. He noted down the various you can say the factors, the attitude, the behavior, the physical appearance of the various prisoners, and he has now he reached to the conclusion that particular physical appearance would lead to a criminal behavior. For this, he has also conducted an autopsy with a notorious criminal. So during that autopsy, he came to know that a certain part of the brain, that is called the cerebellum, has some, you can say, it is grown, or it has some different representation in a people like that. So he reached that the biological factors are important for the, you can say, it is important towards by these biological factors make the person criminal or a good citizen in the society. So he was these positivists talked about the individual study of the subject. So they try to identify particular traits so that they can model or they can bring some changes so that these the deviant behavior of these people can be corrected. So moving on from the you can say the legal perspective of what was the classical and the positivist, we have also the social definitions towards the you can say the behavior of a individual person, why a individual person follows the social norms and why a certain person deviates from the social norm. So we have the various sociological theories. So one of these theories is the structural functional theories of deviance. The functionalists argue that deviance can serve a positive social function, and Emile Durkheim is one of the most famous sociologists. He identified two functions of deviance. First, deviance can help a society to clarify its moral boundaries, and second, deviance can help promote social cohesion. So he considered deviation as not as the crime, but he said that it brings the solidarity of the society. Emile Durkheim is very much famous for his study conducted for this for he conducted a study regarding the suicides in in France. So he reached the conclusion that the solidarity or the cohesiveness of the society helps individual to overcome the challenges which he is facing in day-to-day life. For example, he studies suicide. So the one interesting point that he came is that the suicide rate during the war was less in comparison to when the country was going on war. So during the war, obviously, we all agree that during the war, the economic condition of the country goes down. The per capita income of the individual decreases. Still, the suicide rate goes down when in the country when there is a war rather than peace. So the reason behind that was that a society is more shows more solidarity, is more cohesive when we have a challenging situation. We are facing a challenging situation. We feel more, you can say, assimilated in a society in such situations. So he reached to the conclusion by his deviation theory, and he said that what are the social facts control the individuals, and social facts are a manifestation of a group behavior of various individuals in a cultural setup. So next, the theory of deviation, the conflict theory comes in picture. Theory of deviation, that was the structure and functioning. Then the other school of thought is the conflict theories. Mostly these are the people who are the neo-Marxist or the Marxists. So they defined the conflict in this society or deviation of in the society with their perspective, what they thought, that why people deviate from a particular social norms, or why a particular individual commit crime. So conflict theory, their work was to study the inequalities of wealth and power, and they noted that inequalities are present in our definition of deviation as well. Deviation is a result of social conflict. In order for our power to maintain their power, in order to maintain the powerful maintain their power, they marginalize and criminalize the people who threaten their power. Inequalities they reproduce in a way deviance is defined. Basically, they believe that rules are applied unequally and that the punishment for rule violators are unequally distributed. Those at the top are subject to different rules and sanctioned to those nearer to the bottom. So you can say the conflict theory, they say that there is a difference between the powerful in the society and the people who are the common in the society. There may be a well-defined laws, but the implementation of law is different for someone who is very powerful, and it's different for the people who are common in society, and that leads to the deviation in the society. That was their inference from that theory. So the most important, you can say, the conflict theory is the Merton's structural strain theory, that argues that the tension or strain between socially approved goal and individual ability to meet these goals through socially approved means will lead to deviation in an individual. For example, and in his study, he identified 5 ways in people would adapt and deviate. For example, if society provides the, you can say, he termed he based his study on two aspects: the means and the goals of the society. What are the means in the society, and what are the objective or the goals society terms or consciously or unconsciously provides an individual that an individual should achieve. For example, a person during our when we used to study the cracking the all India entrance examination for any of the exam for IIT, JEE, or whether it is nowadays NEET or any of such examinations, was even expected by the people around us. So this was the, you can say a set of because it was the means to achieve an objective, because the objective was, if you achieve success, the objective is you will be well placed, you will be doing better in your professional life. So this was the objective. So these are the means and the objective. And now when we take the example of simply the example of, you can say, the selection in IIT JEEs, if we go and see that if we conduct a study, so is a student residing in a rural area and a student residing in an urban area and having the same capabilities, forget of the we are taking the capability variable as constant. If we compare the resources, for example, the availability of coaching, the availability of better education, the availability of better infrastructure, obviously it is with the student, which it will be with the student which he or she may be residing in a metro. So on this whole concept, the Merton's structural strain theory argues that there's strain and tension and the conflict results into deviant behavior. Now, how these 5 behavior, how people react to these 5, you can say, the behavior, these conflicting behaviors. So, Merton's strain theory mode method conformity accepts approved goals. That is, there are people who conform to the norms, or sorry, means and the goals. For example, a student conforming to the means, that is, he prepares and gets selected in the examination by you can say by appearing in the examination. He or she clears the examination and gets into the premier institutes or any of the good institutes, and he pursues his whatever education and gets a good job. So he is or she is, according to the societal norms, doing having the means and also achieving the goal. Now, innovators or innovators accepts the approved goals. Obviously, they accept the approved goals, but the goals of the society is being success. Success can be measured by various variables depending on the social context of a society or the norms of the society. Usually, as Sir said that prior to starting of this lecture, money. So, for example, the objective is money. So, it may be that the innovators accept that money is important. It may not be through the traditional method of doing a particular, you can say, a professional course. He may or she may start MSMEs, SME, or a small shop. So he may be a successful as the various, we see various individuals around the society. But the means are not approved. Or for example, a student studying, usually parents say that you need to, for example, if there are 2 or 3 friends, 2 friends are doing well in their studies and they have cleared a certain examinations, so the parents will accept, would be expecting from that student to clear the examination as their friends have done. But he may or she may, during the coming years, may do better than what these 2 individuals have done, because they are termed as the innovator. Now, ritualism abandons society goals, the people who and conform to approved mean. For example, a person, maybe he is or may not be successful in the terms of the society, what the society is representing or manifesting. As we know about the biases. For example, if somebody says that we are biased, so who will check the bias of who is telling us to be biased? So bias is based on a certain, you can say, certain cultural setups, certain contextual setups. So depends on the situation, a person, a same situation, interpretation of an individual, 2 different individuals can interpret the same situation in 2 different ways. So the ritualism abandons the society goal conform to the approved mean. So they will work, they will work according to the rules, regulation, laws that are created by the society, and they will spend their life. So they are called the ritualistic. So they follow the rituals. So retreatism, here comes the people who we say the in society who are indulge in intoxication, or who are the intoxication, drug abuse. These people, because they not only abandon the goals of the society, but approve means they are not living their life according to the set norms of the society. So they are called the retreatism. Then comes the rebellion and challenges. So these rebellion challenges have their own approved goals and approved means. For example, if we see if we go back in history, especially when we are studying data protection, we will be taking example for the companies who are knowingly or unknowingly capturing our data. For example, Google prior to 2000, when Larry Page and Sergey Brin started this Google, they were in the 2000 they were about to sell Google because it was not functioning as well as they expected. So, but they were, you can say, they can be termed as the rebellion or challenges of the society who started new thing. Or, for example, Tim Berners-Lee, who started the internet, or who initiated or invented the internet. So they have created their own goals and own society. Now the society is working according, because the internet, when internet was invented, since then now it has can completely change the landscape. Now as we are talking about industry 4.0, that we are talking about industry which is which will be managed by the robots, which will have artificial intelligence, machine learning. So uh, it could only happen because the availability of internet and the various technologies developed by these big corporations, technological corporations. So now coming to the why we have discussed it, why people, because ultimately these data protection laws are framed to for individuals or for the group of people or for a society or for a nation, so that the utilitarian concept exists, that the better it's good for large number of people. But still we have, as in every you can say in every field, or in every, we have people with deviant behavior. For example, we have crime existing in the real world. Similarly, crime exists in the online world, and it is growing day by day. And we are more, let's say, because we are more susceptible to such type of threats rather than a physical threat of crime. And it's now very easy for an individual sitting in a room and not only compromising your sensitive financial data, or compromising your credit card details, or compromising your, but it can affect the whole life of the individual. That we will see how privacy in today's, or how the privacy, or how our behavior, it's the behavior of what we are learning, that behavior, our behavior is providing the free data to these corporations, and how we are, and how these corporations, by applying these big data analysis, machine learning, AI, as it is growing, and doing big data analytics, how they are affecting our behavior, not only as an individual, as a society, but as a nation, not only for small nations, but big nations as United States. So it is existing in every sphere. Every individual is being affected by it. So the privacy, so how we will reclaim privacy? We will reclaim privacy before we know that what is privacy, and how we have been, you can say now, how we are being uh, being theft by these you can say these data, you can say data thieves, how our data has been captured by these companies without our consent and without our knowledge, and it has been processing, and it is used. We may be lucky that still we have not been compromised with our personal and sensitive data, but the way the technology is moving, the way the technology, it will be only a few years that every individuals, and still, and we don't know, still we are watched. That's why the first slide shows that you are watched, that everybody here is being watched and tracked every time, whether it is the as important person as Angela Merkel in Germany, or individual sitting in, you can say, New Delhi, or any of our smaller cities. So what is the first thing, as we say that, what is the first thing when we wake up in the morning? What we do? We probably check our phone. So what data we are transmitting, at what time we got up, similarly. And if you are smart enough, and you are and we are smart enough, and by being smart, we are using smart devices. For example, if I am using a smart watch, so it's not only that the you can say the servers, or these company, if they want to know that when I woke up, but they can also know that what is my heart rate, what is my heartbeat, and whether I'm walking, whether I'm sitting, or in which part of my house I am. So these type of data is being transmitted on daily basis. So you may be very, you can say, surprised to know that for some individuals, or usually it happens, the average processing of your data daily is 14,000 times per day for your from your phone. So
वो वाला ना
yes,
साइंस वाला पॉजिटिव है सर, कुछ बच्चों का 6 to 7 बच्चों का आज पॉजिटिव है ना, तो वो बोल रहे हैं कुछ तो कल या परसों का बोला है, और
so please be aware that if your spoken words include, for example, now we are moving from, you can say, mobile has been will be the history of, you can say, we are past history. Now mobile data, we have smart houses, we have smart lighting, we have smart meters. Now consider that for example, you have probably installed a smart meter in your house. By hacking your smart meter, I would be aware that whether you are in your house or you're outside your house. It's so easy. And if such information is provided to, for example, the person who has a deviant behavior, as we discussed, or for example, thieves, so they can easily know that whether for how many persons are there in house, how many persons are not there in house. So these are the information, and this is happening in real life. We will be seeing some examples also. Not specific to India, but obviously it is happening. So we will not be, because it's just a matter of time, or it may be happening, and it's just a matter of time that it is revealed. So the prism, you can say the prism started by the NSA, in which the Snowden acted as a whistleblower, was one of the, you can say it was just one of the incidents which shows that our personal data has not only been analyzed, by these company, but by these security agencies. And if we are so important that the security agencies want us that what we are doing, it's now very easy for any of you can say these type of institutions to track individual or a group. Now, so that's why when we talk about that, any of the data that we are talking, it's captured, it's analyzed. So it may be your sensitive data, it may be your personal data. So then a question comes, a very interesting question: who knows better about you? You Google or your spouse? So a question comes: who will, in today's world, who is better aware of your, you can say, behavior or your liking this and what is going in your mind? Whether Google is much aware or your spouse is much aware. So the obvious answer is Google, because nowadays everything we start typing in that the you can say the status or in the Google, and we search of the problem, whether it is any type of ailment or if we are taking any type of medicine. So all these data is being captured and may be used for you can say nudging or for creating biases in us, or by change for or changing our behavior. So coming to the data thieves, there data thieves, there are big corporations, there are individual data thieves. So we're discussing mostly the corporations. So the discovery that personal data resulting from our digital lives would be very profitable. So as I discussed, since in the year in the years the was going under losses, and since 2001 and 2003 it started the profit of the Google started increasing, because now Google understood that advertising is one of the, you can say, the personalized advertising can be a big business. And you can see today we have personalized advertising. Not only that, if you have a smart TV in your home, everybody would be having. The smart TV has a sensor when you, especially when you are watching any program, and if there is an advertisement on your television, and if you just mute that advertisement. For example, if you're talking or you don't like to have the sound, still then the TV your television and your mobile is communicating. Your mobile knows what advertisement, what type of things you are watching. Usually you would be seeing a pop-up or a recommendation of a particular product or a particular, you can say, service, which you have talked or which you have discussed. So this is not this is how they are hearing to us. And if you talk about Facebook, now we talked about Google, but Facebook has proved its lack of respect of privacy in many other ways. About 87 million Facebook users their data analyzed for political purposes by data. We have all heard about the Cambridge Analytica case. So what Facebook did is that it had surveyed around 27 lakh peoples about their preferences. They have asked for their preferences about the political affiliation. And so by knowing the political affiliation, because most of us use Facebook now, when you like a page, you post some content on the Facebook. By observing your Facebook account, or by analyzing your Facebook account, by your likes, by your dislikes, by your tweets, anybody can judge what are your political affiliations, what type of, you can say, what type of, for example, if what type of the preferences in movies you have, the Netflix, it analyzes your preferences. So everything has we have been analyzed in the name of bettering the service and security of the individual. So for years, Facebook allowed Microsoft Bing search engine to see Facebook users' friends without their consent, and gave Netflix and Spotify the ability to read and even delete Facebook users. So in 2005, it started logging all text messaging and calls from Android users without asking for their consent. So any of our personal data that we usually would not share with anyone in, for example, especially to the outside world, is known to these big corporations or big companies easily, what are our preferences, what our liking and disliking, and what are what, or even though what are the future purchases that we need to make, what are the requirements. So and believe me, the AI and the machine learning is you can say advancing in a such a pace that soon they will, you can say, replace the human intelligence. So because now the machine can learn on their own, so they have been trained. So these are the problems on how we will be dealing with the societal problems that will be arising with the AI and machine learning. So obviously it will benefit in many aspects, but how we will be dealing with the problems, for example, the job losses that the society will face, the unemployment rate that society will, how the society will deal with this question needs still needs to be answered. So taking an example, Eric's made it, he's the Google CEO, he made it clear, very clear that Google would like to seize control of the autonomy. The goal is to enable Google user to able to ask. So he said that the users who use Google, he said that I actually think that most people don't want Google to answer their questions. They want Google to tell them what they should be doing next. So this is the dependency of the individual behavior on the technology, and it's all pervasive. Everyone is being affected by this. So to deal with this, certain principles, way back it was these data protection principles that was you can say proposed by United Kingdom. These are the set of the 8 principles according to which the data should be protected. We will also be seeing the Indian context, but because we are much lacking in the you can in the context of the data protection, still we have heard the case of WhatsApp, the various you can show social networking platforms, how they have conflict with the established governments across the world. It's not only in our country, Twitter has many. So before moving to the data protection principle, one of the, if I don't know whether you would have heard about a citizens credit system that has been in place in China. So what is about the citizen credit system? That is, a credit has been provided to every citizen because the surveillance is all over the places. So your every activity has been watched. For example, the people with high credit scoring, they have the options of queue. They don't have to fall in queue. And if you are not following if you have a low credit score, you need to wait for very long. It may be that certain you cannot get admission of your kid into a certain school because you have a low credit score. Now, these credit scores defined by a special set of norms. If you don't fall into the special set of norms, then obviously you are deviant according to the particular set of norms. Now, by the surveillance, each and activity when it is being observed, for example, if I take the example of China, playing your video game provides you a negative credit point. So purchasing alcohol provides you a negative credit point. So this will reduce your citizen credit point, and overall you will be as an individual with no state. For example, you cannot, for example, everything is owned or controlled by the state. For example, school, your transportation, or if these credit points will decide whether you will fly to a particular state or not. So the individual will be you can say bound to obey a certain norms or principles that has been laid. So why the privacy is important? Because for the development and for the growth of an individual, the privacy and autonomy of each individual is very much important. For example, we use various for the Google Nest and the Alexa. They continuously capture the your data, your personal data, especially for example the data related to your family, data related to your kids. It may be that for example today you are sharing your pictures on the Facebook of your kids, or whosoever is a minor. Are you not you can say violating, for example, if your kid grows and he or she asks why you have shared my pictures without taking my consent? So these are the various, you can say, the aspects that need to be discussed, and most of the problems that are over behavioral concerns. So because as we are approaching over time, so I will coming on to the data protection principles. what are the data protection principles that has been laid by United Kingdom, and this was the one of the exhaustive way, because it was laid way back in 1998. There were many improvements and that, but as the, you can say, technological advancement is so fast, so we need to change the laws so that the balance between the freedom of the individual, liberty of this individual, and the you can say the better management of resources in society is you can say met. So personal data shall be processed fairly and lawfully, and in particular shall not be processed unless at least one of the condition in there is a Schedule 2 is met. And in case of sensitive personal data, at least one of the condition in Schedule 3 is met. So we have a Schedule 2 and said that it should be it should not be processed more than what it is required. So these are the principles on which these data are based. The personal data shall be obtained only for one or more specified lawful purposes and shall not be further processed in any manner incompatible with the purpose of those purposes. For example, if a data is collected by a school for your ward, that the only data should be used by the school, and it should be not processed in any manner. But for example, if a data is taken for admission, or a data is, for example, a bank, we encounter this problem, a bank takes our data, or any of the takes our data, and our data they process and they sell our data to some insurance companies. On we receive calls, or we receive from real estate companies. So it is the compromise of our personal data. So it should not be further or with the manner which has been laid down. So personal data shall be adequate, relevant, and not excessive into the relation and purpose or purposes for which they are processed. So an adequate, that is, the data should be adequate, that it should not be more than what it is required, and it should be relevant to the why we are collecting. For example, there was a case when the date of birth for example, if in a college, or for example an academic institution, we take the data of the student, and for example we ask the data of the parents, the grandparents, the family members. So this is the, you can say that it is not the relevant data. It is not that we are asking more of that data. So non excessive data is not required. Personal data should be accurate and wherever necessary kept up to date. So it should be accurate as much as possible if the process by these agencies. So personal data processed for any purpose or shall not be kept for longer than is necessary for that purpose or purposes. So any data, for example, if somebody visits to a hospital, so his data should be kept till the time the patient is there. So if that data should not be kept longer than that for other purposes. For example, I will be discussing the problem if for the medical data. So if the medical data lands into the wrong hands, if the medical data is compromised. Recently we have recently we have the news of the data of the Air India customers were compromised. So these data, how these are compromised due to this, and recently the news came that it was due to the cyber attack. So about the right of the individual, personal data shall be processed in according with the right of the data subjects. Data subjects have the every right on the data. So according to, for example, if I am going to make a driving license, so the only data that is required for the driving license should be there and should be processed according to the right which I require the data subject. Appropriate technical and organizational measures shall be taken against the unauthorized or unlawful processing of personal data and against the accidental loss or destruction or damage to the personal data. And personal data shall not be transferred to the country outside the European Economic Area because it's prevailing in the United Kingdom. So by considering that the servers of these companies who process these data should be placed in any of the European Union countries according to this Data Protection Act. So the servers needs to be in their geographical, you can say geographical and political boundary of that country. So when we come to the Indian scenario, since India does not have a comprehensive data protection mechanism, the main enactment that deals with the protection of data is the IT Act, Information Technology Act, and Reasonable Security Practice and Procedures Sensitive Personal Info Rule 2011. So what are the things that are covered in that, you can say, the Data Protection Act? That is our password, our financial information such as bank account and credit card, debit or other payment or instrument detail, physical, psychological and mental health condition, sexual orientation, medical records and history, and biometric information. These information are protected by the Data Protection Act that has been enacted in India. However, the information which is freely available in the public domain is not concerned within the ambit of sensitive personal data or information. There was a case in USA uh, that there was the compromise of the sensitive data and the case of identity theft. Identity theft is that your identity Facebook page or Facebook account would be created with the data available or the data that has been you can say captured online. Facebook, for example, a Facebook page was created in her name and certain criminal activities were performed. So after that, when the police got to the lady who was not involved in that case, but she has to fight for many years the legal battle. She has to land up in jail for few years because since the investigation was going on. So these are the, you can say, the side effects of the data compromise that we can encounter. Now, looking at the bleak situation, what we can do, and that is our question, that is the objective behind that, that when we know all these things, what we can do, what behavioral change that we can do, that the minimum of our data is available or minimum of our data can be the data that we are producing should not be used against us. So what we can is stop default personal data collection. Sorry, N is not there. So stop default personal data collection. That is the data that has been collected. We should not be so personal. You should not share personal information. Improve cyber security standards. That if you are using a system, you should have, obviously you should have a firewall. You should have you can say when you are doing an online transaction, you should have various software that can help you to improve your security. Tracking our personal data, that we should be aware that where our personal data is and if and how it has been stored and what are the securities or securities taken up by the organization to take care of that data. The first is to match personal data to the person whom the data is about and make sure that everyone is asked for the consent before data about them is shared. So tracking of personal data comes there. There are two catch in this situation. That is, the first is to match personal data to the person whom the data is about and make sure that everyone asks for the consent before. Now, consent is something that we can discuss. For example, there are two types of consent. There is explicit and implicit consent. Now, consent, for example, if you give a explicit consent of storing your DNA data with a DNA bank, for example, if you want to share your DNA data with the, or so the DNA data, is it yours or the DNA data is of all your family members, or are you authorized to share that data, or you need to take consent from each individual in your house, whether it's the you can say your your child. So such type of data, the consent. So that's why there is a catch, that whether the consent is explicit, implicit, or it is without consent, because the data related to DNA affects the whole family tree. So the second major challenge is to devise a way in which we can be truly informed about how our data is being used without further endangering our privacy. So we will not endanger our privacy. So the is to devise a way which we truly inform how our data is used further. So to deal with this, the creator of World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, is currently working on a project called the Solid, in which it will help individuals to better manage the personal data. So what we can do, that is, think twice before we share any data. Respect others' privacy. If privacy, when I talk about respect privacy, the privacy of the children as well. So we should respect the privacy you can say which part, what we are sharing on the social networking website, which things of which individuals we are sharing in the on the social networking website. We should not only respect our privacy but the privacy of the others. So say no to various consents. We usually encounter the various consent forms, various cookies that needs to be installed on system. Try to say no to these because they are capturing our data which we are not aware of. Now talk about devices. As much as devices that we will be installing, or the smart devices that we will be using, for example a smart because nowadays automobile industry is also capturing the regular data with their smart connected cars, smart homes, your mobile phone, smart television. So as much as you will be reducing, or you may be judicially using these devices, you will be providing less data to these company, which can in future may be used for their benefit or against or for our loss. So emails are, we think that emails are letters, but they are like the open postcard. So anybody can, you can say through your emails identify the preferences you are the preferences you have, the you can say biases you have. So search engines, especially search engines, if you talk about the Chrome or with the search engines, they usually capture our each and every step. So try using some you can say the not the traditional but the non-traditional search engines. So don't be a cyberhood. When we talk about cyberhood, don't put your all the informations online which is not required. We should not usually do that. Use obfuscation. Obfuscation means, for example, if there is a website, or there is a service where that is asking our data, for example, email, phone number, age, name. We may manipulate our information. It's not required that we provide the correct information, because if it is not required by us, some you can say particular agency, or the government agency that requires a correct data, but the organization which usually we encounter that they require our email to send us a link. So we can use our email, which we usually don't use, because the compromise of email will lead to the sharing of our all the personal data that we have on our phone. Try to be analog, go analog, then digital. It seems you can say in this era that when we are moving to AI, and we are talking about go analog, but if you need to preserve your privacy, we need to do that. Buy newspapers rather than reading your news on your social networking website, because through this it's easy to analyze your you can say political affiliation, your liking about a particular thing. It's very easy or to analyze that. So privacy is a collective effort. It is not that the individually we can deal with the privacy. Is a collective effort. For example, if a DNA data is compromised of an individual, of a family, so the whole of the DNA data is compromised of that family, and it can be used. For example, if the DNA or through the DNA of the insurance come to know that, or comes to know that a particular disease is prevailing in a family, it may lead to a non-insurance or high premium in the insurance. So resisting the power of these, we can do the big corporation, because if these few corporations will be, you can say, not only our capturing our data or analyzing our data, but by using these our data to their betterment rather than ours. So collectively we can stop this, and surely we will try to improve that, because as it is said that data is the new oil, and because now data is not only, you can say, helping in the companies to get a better business, but now it's changing the behavior. It's nudging and changing the behavior of the individuals. In the case of cyber analytica, we have seen now the case now the one best, you can say, there was the case of Ashley Madison. I think you would have heard about Ashley Madison. That was a famous dating website. Its data was compromised. And what happened with the compromise? Some people thought that they will teach a lesson to the people who are married and they are getting in an affair on this website. So they revealed all the personal data of these people. So what were the consequence of that? The consequence of that, many people has committed suicide. Many people were extorted. Many people got the extortion call. They got the extortion call from various people without knowing them. So these are the consequences that will be, you can say, with the compromise of the data. So by following this, at least we can reduce, we can at least not, we can, yes, completely wipe out our footprints on the internet, but at least we can reduce the our footprints on the internet. So this is all about the privacy and data protection law and the behavior that is. So Ranjit sir, so any questions?
Yeah, now the floor is open for discussion.
Hello.
So if any one of you have any question, please feel free to ask to our resource person. Anyone having any question? I think they do not have any question.
Okay,
So
sir.